Welcome everyone to another session live with me, Aziz Gul, in this week's Accelerate with Aziz live Q&A. The theme of this week's session is wealth paths. Now, I know you've heard, or some of you may have heard me mention someone who I consider a mentor to me, Sharran Srivatsaa. And, he's, as I've mentioned before, had several billion-dollar exits, and he knows a thing or two about wealth creation. And I was listening to him this week, and one of the things that he brought up is this idea of wealth paths, right? And so the thing about your wealth path is that it's not something that you are taught in school, unfortunately, right? It's something that you kind of have to figure out on your own once you get into the real world. And, there are lots of gurus out there that will tell you that there is some kind of step-by-step plan for you to get there. And that is true to a certain extent. What do I mean by that? I mean that it is true in that a plan can be put in place, an action plan can be put in place for you to get there. And that action plan can be built around a framework, right? What is a framework? It is a set of fundamentals which you can follow, a proven or established path for you to get a particular result. And so the part that they're leaving out is that you have to follow a wealth path that is bespoke or specific to you, right? And so, for instance, their wealth path may be real estate, but your wealth path may be entrepreneurship. And so, until you identify which wealth path fits who you are right now in terms of your history, your identity, your skill sets, and who you want to become and the results that you want to get, you are not going to get there because you are following someone else's plan. And so that's why, as I provide strategy as a service within Accelerate with Aziz, we provide a bespoke action plan that starts off with you identifying which wealth path is right for you, which wealth path is best fit based on where you are right now and where you want to go and the results or the goals that you want to achieve. And so that bespoke part, that one-of-one part, that unique part is so critically important because you could be going enthusiastically in the wrong direction by following someone else's wealth path. And so what I'm going to get into today is the 4 wealth paths that are established, that are fundamental, that are a framework. And then the next step after this live is for you to be able to identify which path is right for you, create that bespoke action plan for you to get from where you are now to where you want to go, using a wealth path that is relevant and bespoke and best fit for you, and then to take action and to go into execution, to go into implementation mode, right? Because that is what it requires. It requires you to put in the work, right? We are not here to punt, get rich quick schemes, right? Building your generational wealth, establishing your legacy, it requires work. Now, that doesn't mean we have to work hard only. We also have to work smart. But it all starts with the plan. So like I was telling someone in a call earlier this week, Abraham Lincoln, he once said, if I have 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4.5, 5 hours sharpening the axe, right? Because every great fortune was built on a foundation, and every solid foundation was built on a great plan. So spend 80% Pareto principle, spend 80% of your time creating the plan, and then the other 20% in execution. So today we are going to go over the 4 wealth paths, which are established fundamentals for wealth creation year in, year out, generation in, generation out. As Jeff Bezos says, Amazon invests in the things that will not change. And so here in Accelerate with Aziz, we look at the wealth creation drivers that will not change. We look at the fundamentals. Because remember, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And when you try to go too fast and grow too fast, everything breaks. Hey, Baji, welcome to the call. Good of you to join us. So the 4 wealth paths that I want to discuss with you today, the first one is entrepreneurship. Which one of you would have guessed that? And the second one we're going to be talking about is real estate. And the third one we're going to be talking about is being an investor. And then the fourth and final one that we are going to be talking about today is being an influencer, being a creator, right? Being a content creator. And so these are the 4 ways in which it gets done. By just preempting me there with the sales, correct, right? So the first one we're going to get into is entrepreneurship. Now, why is entrepreneurship one of the established ways to create wealth? Why is it one of the fundamental paths to create wealth? Yes, I'm glad you are always good and always welcome in being here and experiencing, these sessions with us. And I really appreciate you guys' attendance. Thanks, Raj. So entrepreneurship is important because it allows us to create equity, right? When you are trading time for money in a job, it is extremely difficult to earn millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions trading your time for money, right? Even the most successful lawyers, management consultants, any other kind of high-end profession actuary that you can think of that is trading time for money, there is a certain ceiling which they reach, right? So for instance, Tony Robbins, right? I'm sure many of you know Tony. So Tony Robbins charges trading time for money $1 million a year for his advisory services. And he charges this to asset managers, investors, and wealth managers, right? It's $1 million a year. Right? There are some coaches and consultants out there in the online space that are charging 50,000, 25,000, 100,000, 250,000 to work with them for a year, right? Tony Robbins at the upper echelons of that charges $1 million a year. And so there is this limit, right? There is the 7-figure limit in terms of what you can create when you're trading time for money. But when you become an entrepreneur, when you build a business where you leverage other people's capital, other people's labor, other people's time, other people's tech, other people's IP, you can create something of value outside of yourself, which has an equity that is an order of magnitude bigger than what you could achieve by trading time for money. And a perfect example of this is all of the famous Silicon Valley companies. It's the Facebooks, it's the Twitters, it's the Ubers, right? Think about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not rich because he trades time for money. Elon Musk is rich because he builds companies, and those companies have a net asset value and an equity value which is outside and uncorrelated with him and the amount of time he spends, because people are valuing his vision, right? And he is able to turn that vision into a tangible financial value through equity and stock. And so he can then grow the value of that, or he can sell his equity in that company and create a multiple event for himself, right? This is why people get into things like private equity, even though we're going to talk about, investors in the third one. But this is why equity is important, because it's not tied to you and your time. And that is how entrepreneurship, if you look at, I was looking at some stats earlier today, 70% of the 1%, they are entrepreneurs. They are self-made entrepreneurs that built equity by creating a company that solved a particular problem and then either grew that company to multiples of where it started or exit that company for a multiple event, which created uncorrelated unicorn value for themselves and generational wealth for themselves and their families. Right? So the second way that I want to talk about today is this idea of real estate. And so real estate for me is always an interesting one. I know in the online space, particularly, people are always talking about it. I think it's something that the everyday man can relate to because it seems on the surface more simple, more tangible, lower barrier to entry than something like a business. But I truly believe that, real estate is a wealth creation opportunity, and this is just my personal opinion, where you already need to have created your wealth, right? For me, real estate is a wealth preservation. It's a defensive strategy, right? Because if you look at the returns on real estate, you are always getting back a percentage of what you invested, a percentage of your capital, whether that's 5, 10, 15, 20% a year, whether it's a rental pool or whether you're doing capital flips, right? It's still always a percentage, as opposed to a business where you can get a 50x multiple on what you put in. And so, depending on, again, where you are in your wealth creation journey, if you are looking to create your wealth for the first or the second or the third time, then entrepreneurship and businesses is a far bigger lever for you than real estate, and stocks, for instance, where you have a capital requirement that is a high barrier to entry. And from a return on investment perspective, you are looking at a marginal return, not a multiple event. And that's the big difference, right? So real estate is, of course, one of the established paths to create wealth. But again, looking at the data, right? The math never lies, is what I believe. And if you look at the data, real estate has created the most millionaires in the world, but none of the billionaires. If you look at the billionaires in the world, it has been through entrepreneurship, private equity investment, that those billionaires have been created. And now, again, obviously, lots of these billionaires then diversified into real estate and property to then protect and preserve their wealth over the long term. But in terms of the wealth creation event, if you get into real estate, understand that you are making a millionaire play. And if you're getting into entrepreneurship, you're making a billionaire play. And so the third one, which dovetails nicely with what I'm saying now, is this idea of just being an investor. And so you might say to yourself, oh, but I don't have the capital to be an investor. Well, you might not have the capital right now, but if you are someone who is resourceful, you have other things, other resources that you can contribute to the investment space, such as relationships, such as in terms of bringing investors to particular deals or opportunities and getting a slice of the pie in that way. You then can also say, okay, well, I don't have the capital and I don't have the relationships, but I have really great deal flow. And so, if you have great deals, there will always be capital to back those deals. And so you can get involved by being the deal originator or the capital raiser or the capital partner. And so again, it just depends on where you are in your wealth creation journey and what you can contribute in terms of resources to create new value, to create additional value. And if you can operate and prove yourself valuable in those circles and in that space, then, 1, 2, 3 deals later, you may go from a position of first being the deal originator to then being the capital raiser to then being the capital partner, right? And letting your money work on your behalf. right? As opposed to your skill set or your sweat equity, right? So that's being an investor, and that's obviously an established path to wealth. And I'm speaking specifically here now, obviously, in terms of venture capital and private equity and looking at private market investment opportunities, alternative investment opportunities, as opposed to stock market, where, you know, it's very similar to the real estate play, like we mentioned earlier. And so the fourth way, which is the established path, is something that's a bit more new age for those of you that are a bit more traditional, but you know, it is definitely the flavor of the time, which is this idea of being a content creator. You know, we look at people like the Jen, is it Kylie Jenner? Is that her name? Someone can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But youngest female billionaire in the world, and you know, built a beauty empire overnight. And she did so not because she was an amazing business person. She didn't achieve this because she had great investment banking connections. She achieved this because she was able to monetize attention. And attention is the most valuable commodity in our time. And so this idea of being a content creator and building an audience and, you know, generating, for instance, AdSense revenue, or, you know, leveraging that attention and that influence to be able to market a particular product, has become the fastest way to generate wealth today. A great example of this is Deadpool. What's his name now? I think you all know Ryan Reynolds. Thank you. So Ryan Reynolds, obviously big A-list movie star, made tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars as an actor. And the crazy thing about Ryan Reynolds is he's made more money as an entrepreneur than he has as an actor. And he's been an entrepreneur for a far shorter span of time. But because he had already owned attention, it was just about him monetizing that attention in order to create new value and new wealth for himself and the companies that he was involved in. So for instance, he was involved in a media company, and he decided, okay, well, you know, instead of the media company paying me to be the actor making the ad, I'm going to make an equity play and say, I'll invest in the media company. I'll make the ads for free and then monetize and leverage my attention to create new wealth for the company and myself, right? Which resulted for him in $1 billion exit. And so this is what the game is about, right? And I think that's an interesting point to kind of lead us into this idea of stacking wealth paths. So obviously the first step for you is to identify where you're at right now, right? In terms of your skill set, your background, and what you want to achieve, and whether entrepreneurship, real estate, investment, or content creation is your path to wealth, right? And once you've done that, then to drive deep mastery in that one vertical, right? Because the reality is, if you become extremely good at what you do, the right opportunities will find you, right? You will gain essentially notoriety or influence, right? In a very self-perpetuating fashion. And so once you've done that, you can then do what is called skill stacking, or in this case, wealth path stacking, whereby you start to borrow and leverage from the other wealth paths in order to supercharge your wealth creation. So a great example of this is Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is an actor who is trading time for money. He decides that entrepreneurship will give him equity leverage that trading time for money cannot. And so he becomes an entrepreneur, but at the same time, as he's become an operating partner in this media company, he's also become an investor, right? Because he wants to sweeten his equity piece. And so he then identifies that because of his history as an actor and his skill set and his ability to command and influence and leverage attention and monetize it, he's then now using content creation. And so he's pretty much using 3 of the paths at once in a path stack to be able to catapult his wealth and pretty much within a very short span of time reach billionaire status. And so that is what creating this bespoke wealth path plan is about, right? It's about identifying where you are right now and what you need to do to achieve mastery in your single vertical. And once you've achieved that mastery, how do you begin to integrate the wealth paths in order to accelerate your growth and your net worth? And so I think this is a beautiful topic. It's something that for me creates a lot of clarity. Having done this now for more than a decade, there's so much information out there. There's so many gurus telling you all of these different things of, how you should be doing it, why their way is the holy grail. And, you kind of spend time, going down all of these different paths and really not getting the results that you want, or maybe not getting it at the velocity that you need it. And it can sometimes be so demotivating and so frustrating. And so that's why I felt it was really important to have the session and just create that clarity for people to make them understand that your wealth journey is unique and you need a bespoke action plan, not a generic one, in order to get the results that you're looking for. And it's because you are using someone else's wealth path that you're not getting the results that you're looking for. And so you really need to just take that step back and say, you know what? Let's stop trying to reinvent the wheel. And let's stop thinking that there is some silver bullet that is going to magically just make everything click overnight. And understand that there are established fundamental frameworks and ways to create this wealth. And we just need to figure out which is the one that is right for us. We need to identify which is the one that is right for us and then go all in on that one. And then, we can then, get a bit more cosmopolitan and integrate and supercharge at a later stage. But right now, it's just about start, right? It's just about take that first step, make that first action. I promise you, if we get off this call now and you take one action in the direction of establishing your wealth path, you are 80% more likely to follow through than if you get off the call, do nothing, and go and sit on your phone, go and sit on WhatsApp, go and sit on YouTube, go and sit on Netflix. Right? So for those of you who are ready to take the next step, I encourage you and I recommend join Accelerate with Aziz and spend a Rent My Brain session with me and let me help you identify which wealth path is right for you and help you create that bespoke action plan that is the fundamental step-by-step guide for you to get from where you are now to where you need to be. And then support you along the way and help you troubleshoot and brainstorm when things get tough and when you lose discipline and when you feel unmotivated, right? Because that's actually what it's about. Great, Cardiff. Ready to stack. Awesome. You can find the link in my bio and we can take it from there. But that's really why I wanted to have the session, because I think there's a whole lot of misinformation out there and a whole lot of gurus saying a whole bunch of things. And I think sometimes it's important just to take it back to basics, because the truth that I've experienced is that fancy fails and simple scales. So here at Accelerate with Aziz, we keep it simple. There are 4 wealth paths. Choose one. Take action. Do it. Get the results you need. It's as simple as that. Right? And as always, if you guys have any follow-up questions, you can grab me in the DMs. For those of you that are already part of the Accelerate with Aziz community, you can catch me in the chat. Share with me your money's worth moments. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. And thanks for watching. I'm Aziz Gul. Follow for more wealth secrets and advice. Ciao for now.